Hi, Laoshi Lawrence McElroy here for Water Tiger School of Tai Chi Chuan, here for another in our pre-recorded series of videos. That's really all we're doing anymore. For our YouTube channel at this time, I'm going to start by saying that, one, we're going to probably have helpers again today, in and out of the picture. We'll see how that goes. And two, as we've been announcing, these are a little bit more spread out than they have been. Now, that being said, this one follows pretty close on the heels of the last one, but the last one was a short little sort of addendum to an earlier split leg hamstring stretch video that we had done. And we haven't really done a strictly Tai Chi focus in a while, so I thought we would do that today. So there's that. There may be a chance, given the Delta variant and the pandemic of the unvaccinated, that we may find ourselves in another lockdown. And if that's the case, these will again become a little bit more frequent. But let's, while that might be the good side of a bad deal, let's not have the bad deal. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to reach back into our Tai Chi lottery group. We're almost done with that. We've done quite a few. I have a list here, and I'm going to use the list. A lot of times I work to get this stuff in my head so I don't have to cheat, but I'm not even going to say that it's cheating. I'm just going to tell you what they were and where you can find them. So the first big group are all under Facebook Live sessions in the playlist on Water Tiger's YouTube channel. And they switch back and forth between a couple of different libraries that were suspended back when the world stopped in March of last year. The first lottery that we did was Drunken, and that was for West Babylon Public Library, and that was back on March 31st of 2020. Then we did Molasses for Sachem on May 4th of last year, Dalton X for West Babylon on May 19th of last year. Then West Babylon stepped out of the equation because they moved into a remote offering. So that class actually came back for a while. I'm no longer affiliated with West Babylon. As a matter of fact, I'm no longer affiliated with Sachem at this time. The next lottery choice was Minimal, again for Sachem. August 24th of last year, Quicksilver. September 28th of last year. Short was October 26th of last year, and that's the end of the Facebook Live session collection of lottery choices. We did a YouTube live stream that was for Sachem on November 16th, so it's not in any of the other playlists. You just have to look for the live sessions. So I think we only did 2 of them before we also had an issue with YouTube Live. And that was Mr. Roboto. And again, that was November 16th of last year. Then we skip all the way to the pre-recorded series. And it was like probably pretty close to the last one we did before we received word that we were not going to be invited back to Sachem. That was March 1st of this year, and that was Round. So we have a few more of those slips remaining to be drawn. These are our lottery slips. Right? But today, and I mentioned Short, that was the one that we did for Sachem as a live session back in October of last year. And this is the other side of that coin. It's tall. So we'll talk about it and why we do it, and that sort of thing as we get into that part of the video. We'll start with a little warm-up from the standing 8 pieces of brocade. Now, I will say, like everything else, everybody does this stuff differently. Everybody does the standing 8 differently. A couple of days ago, I was introduced to someone else's version of the standing 8. Some of them are, they're all pretty vastly different than Water Tiger School's approach, though I believe he's probably equal to what we refer to as our blended approach. A lot of people approach the standing 8 pieces of brocade as an external fire Qigong, and that means the movements have to be specific, and that's where all the focus is, and you have to start at the beginning of the set and go to the end of the set. You can't pull pieces out. We pull pieces out, we teach blended, we talk about the energy and add energy flow and that sort of thing. A little non-specifically mostly, but it is still a part of it and the feelings and that sort of thing. So we can pull pieces out. And this is one, we've done a bunch from the Standing 8 Pieces Brocade as part of this series over the last, what are we at? Let's see, March, April, May, June, July, August. I guess that's 17 months, more or less. And I think there's only one left that sort of could lend itself as a warm-up. There are a couple of pieces that aren't really warm-up material. So, without further ado, I will step back and we'll get going. Oh, before I step back, still doing the t-shirt thing. Very few repetitions since I believe our first video was March 22nd. For Facebook, I think we may have been on the YouTube channel by then. And by the way, we started both the Facebook Live series and the YouTube channel at about the same time because of lockdown, because of home isolation. And the YouTube channel was actually born because we knew that there were a lot of people in the Sachem and West Babylon programs that weren't, on Facebook. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to have some material as well. So we're just going to start with a little shake. So we are going to do Water Tiger's first piece of brocade, which we have a name. We call it Double Hands Hold Up the Heavens. A lot of people just call it the first piece of brocade or first brocade. And again, a lot of people do these things vastly different. So if you are familiar, however, with Water Tiger schools, I'm going to do a little floppy arm turns. I just want to keep a little bit of movement going while I'm talking. And, it just feels good to do this kind of stuff. Movement is good. Where was I? Oh, if you're familiar with Water Tiger schools, Tai Chi Gong Stretch, the basic version, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also differences. And when we talk about the energy, when we talk about sort of the internal breath, so, we talk about that expansion. Now, you can breathe when you have to. Some of the stuff that we do, the external breath and the internal breath match. So when you physically exhale, that's the expansion moment. When you physically inhale, that's the compression of Chi moment, back to the Shia Dantien. Not the acupuncture point on the surface of the lower abdominal cavity, but the actual esoteric vessel that sort of sets in the cup of the hips. So it's on the line between the crown point of the head and the base of the pelvic bowl, but in this general vicinity of height in the body, maybe a little bit lower. But anyway, and it just compresses back on the physical inhalation. Now that may not be the case as we do this. So you want to match the expansion and compressions to the movement. And again, you can think about that as an internal breath that expands to the extremities and perhaps beyond, depending upon the piece. Or depending upon what you're doing. And on the inhalation, the internal breath, again, the internal inhalation, that breath that has gone out comes back in. And when we say, the Chi expands from, it doesn't mean that it leaves the Shia Dantien. And it leaves the Shia Dantien empty until you inhale and then it all comes back. So it's a little bit different than our own physical breath. It expands. It's like a flower opening. The flower doesn't disappear when the petals open. So the petals of the Shia Dantien open and expand out to the extremities and perhaps beyond, and then the petals close and return to the flower of the Shia Dantien. That may be a better way. You think of a color, that there's a concentration of a color in your belly, and that color expands out while still remaining in the belly as well, and then it pulls back in. All sorts of different images to help with that. So there is that. That's sort of the underlying expansion and compression of energy. The movement, we like it to be specific. We would like you to be able to move into the positions as they are described. However, you may have to make some adjustments, and we'll talk about those. I also want to mention the name again. Double Hands Hold Up the Heavens. is our name for this first piece of brocade or the first brocade. And that's created through what's known as the original instructions or the original poetry of the set, the translation that we have. And sort of just Qigong experience and that sort of thing. We like to name things at Water Tiger School. So one of the first differences between this and our Tai Chi Gong Stretch, you know that we're going to be doing something that involves walking because the two blue lines are here. If you followed this series at all, and they are at my shoulder width. And our shoulder width is defined where the drop of the shoulder is, should split the heel in that side in half. And the same on the other side, should split that heel in half. We are inside that shoulder width for this particular piece of brocade. So I'm probably at about hip width, but we don't get too dictatorial about this. We want to be inside our shoulder width, but we don't really say how much. I mean, even if my heels were just off those lines, I would still be inside my shoulder width. So you might want a little broader base, but still inside your shoulder width. You might want to have, a little bit inside of hip width. You don't want to have them too close together. That's too much. And what I want you to pay attention to when we do this stretch, if you've done the Tai Chi Skunk Stretch, there's an arc in it from side to side. There's an arc in this from side to side. But you'll have a little bit more restricted range of motion because the feet are closer together. When they're farther apart, this band is more open and you can get a deeper arc. So that kind of restriction, there's Sasha, aka the cute thing of evil, it creates a different activation and sort of more intense activation. We are also, like the Tai Chi Gong Stretch, going to settle the weight into the balls of the feet. I'm going to turn sideways here for a moment so you might be able to see. Now I'm shifting my weight in the balls of my feet, but you probably can tell if you look closely, my heels are still pretty much in the grippers of this exercise mat. So they're not up in the air. So that is enough, but if you want to sort of turn up the intensity of pressing the ball of the foot in the earth, then you do raise the heels. Now in the Tai Chi Skunk Stretch, we usually, whatever height the heels come up off the mat, we compensate by sitting down into the hips so there's no change of height. We'll still do that a little bit here, but it's actually okay in this set to have a little bit of a rise. You don't want to go out to town because you're going to fall over. So you want to be careful with that. So again, as long as the weight's in the balls of the feet, that's what's important. We will interlock the fingers. Palms are up and clear. I don't interlock the fingers with the fingers on the inside. And by the way, if you've, again, followed this series and we're doing the stretching and that sort of thing, sometimes I'll tell people, if we go to the other side, switch the cross just so you can get used to that. Right? We all sort of have a default setting, sort of where we go, just normally. That's the choice we should make here. We shouldn't mess with ourselves by changing that feeling because that's going to cause, perhaps, it opens the door to the possibility of a distraction, of something that draws your attention. You just want everything to just feel the way it feels. So notice how, this sort of natural hang of the arms, there's sort of a roundness there. Now when we do the Tai Chi Skunk Stretch, the elbows bend as the hands rise. Here, we're going to keep that roundness. Wrists are going to rotate. And also in the Tai Chi Skunk Stretch, we'd actually stop in the front plane. Here we want to come into the plane of the body. This is also where we're in the balls of the feet. I'm going to step back a little bit so you can see the hands over my head, really over the Bak Wei point, the 100 convergences, which at this point should be over the Hu Yin, the bottom of the C. And you'll notice as I'm, give a Chinese name of something, I usually give the English or vice versa, because my Chinese is awful. I don't want somebody going, when I say Bak Wei, going, I don't understand. We're raising our hands over our pancakes. I have no idea what my pronunciation of Bak Wei really is. It probably isn't 100 convergences. But anyway, so there. But that takes some shoulder mobility. So what you may find is, that's it. That's as far as I can go. But instead of just stopping there and going, well, this is as far as I can go, I want you to imagine somebody putting their hand behind your hands and you pretend like you really do have that range of motion. So you do a little isometric press back. Don't overdo it. I don't want you to strain because that's going to get in the way of the chi cultivation and movement. But that little bit of an isometric press is going to create more of a feeling internally of what the proper position, what the final position is defined as being. I hope that made sense. So there's that again. There's just the arc side to side. We're going to do 3 passes. Breathe when you have to. And I'll talk about the Chi cultivation, the expanding moments and the compressing moments. Some of them are longer than others, which is why your regular external breath may not match your expansion and compression of Chi. Also want you to pay attention to, what is activated when you're in the balls of the feet. It's going to activate the Shen Yu. You're also going to feel the legs working in a certain way. And it's just important to sort of just note that. It's Water Tiger School's belief that the standing 8 pieces of brocade from 1 to 8 in different ways activate the torso, the Sanjia, the triple burner, so named because the organs within the torso, the meridians, the pathways of energy, the esoteric vessels related to 3 processes: respiration, digestion, and elimination. Thus, triple burner. So pay attention to, on the outside of the stretch, that lengthening, the inside of the stretch, that compression in a different way than the Chi compressing to the Shia Dantien. So figure out where you're going to put your feet, interlock your fingers, palms up again, comfortable position. Breathe when you have to, but we're going to start with the compression of Chi to the Shia Dantien and then an expansion. And the expansion lasts not only all the way through, and I'm going to take a step back so my hands are still on camera. Sorry, I didn't get my mark down correctly. Still expanding. Notice the orientation of the head between the arms. Compression of the Chi. Sorry, that was held a little bit longer than it should have been. And the first arc. I am arcing to my left. You really should go to your left first, but if you go to your right, your head's not going to explode. And notice that orientation of the arms and the hands don't change. I'm not doing this, right? Or this, or that. And that was an expansion. This is a short compression of the Chi. Another expansion of the Chi. Another compression of the Chi that begins at the release of that stretch and carries all the way through the return of the hands. And notice the elbows folded for the drop. So the arms stay elongated on the way up. Here's the next expansion. Just 3 repetitions, by the way. And then a compression, ball and step heel. The feet are grounded. 3 nail points, 2 sides. Pay attention to that lengthening on the outside of the arc, the shortening, if you will, on the inside of the arc, the pressing things together. And the release. So it's a supple this compression of the Chi to the Shia Dantien, next expansion. Bellows, squeezing and releasing the muscles from one side to the other, creating an internal massage. Long compression from the release all the way to back home. And 1 more round. There are some people that prescribe a given number of repetitions for the different pieces, some more repetitions than others. A little compression of Chi to the Shia Dantien. Last expansion to the first side. Release. Last expansion from the second side, and on the release that should have been a compression of Chi to the Shia Dantien. Sorry, I'm a bad instructor. Release and compression begins at that release and carries all the way through to the hands returning home. Fingers release, left swings to the left, right to the right. We're going to do our standard Water Tiger School close. I want you to pay attention. Your feet are inside your shoulder width, so if you normally only ever or most of the time close with your feet shoulder wide, this will feel different. So don't go on autopilot or you'll knock yourself off balance. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic ball, ball of the foot. 3 points are in alignment. Foot in as the hands come in. Foot down, heel down. I'm lengthening my body, pressing the heel down. Knee pop is optional, and a little rebound pulls the hands over the acupuncture point for the Shia Dantien, left over right or right over left. Water Tiger School point of view is that whichever hand feels like it belongs there is for you at this time in this place, the one that belongs there. Tomorrow it might be the other hand. All right, so tall. What was short? Short was a low stance, and we did things closer to the ground, just physically lowering the center of gravity so you can feel that. Because, a lot of people will say, they'll come to me in class or something, Lao Shi, I really feel like, I have better balance and control, that my center of gravity is lower if I'm in a deeper stance. It's like, well, yeah, because you physically lowered your center of gravity closer to the ground. So the reason we do tall isn't to raise our center of gravity and be top heavy. It's to train ourselves to explore that feeling of keeping that center of gravity low, even though we are high, and not in a Colorado, California, and maybe soon to be New York state of things. But anyway, so that's the idea. And to be able to do that, to explore that, we're going to have to do a couple of walking exercises, hence the railroad tracks. Railroad tracks just, establish what your shoulder width is. So if you're unfamiliar with our shoulder wide or just need a guide, a couple of lines of painter's tape, a couple of chalk lines. And if you have hardwood floors, just sort of count the boards, and every step needs to have the same number of boards, right? But again, drop of shoulder, splitting the heel in half, drop of shoulder, splitting the heel in half. All of our other vertical alignment stuff that we've talked about since March of last year, chest sunk, back rounded, chin from parallel, slight tuck down. That's going to put the crown point of the head. I didn't really talk about this in the Tai Chi Gong Stretch, so well, at least now you're getting it. Crown point of the head held, not lifted to the heavens, right? I'm not doing yoga. I don't want to lengthen everything. I don't want to really shorten everything either. I don't want to pull things together. I want things to be relaxed, so that chin down to below parallel, crown point of the head, which is at the back third of the skull, not the center of the top of the skull. Right here, I'm literally leaning back if my chin is parallel to the ground. Held, not lifted. That way the spine hangs like a string of pearls. And those 2 points, as we move, go from ball of foot to ball of foot. And walking the rails, if we took vertical alignment out of it, is this. So normally, if I'm doing walking the rails, I probably have I'll turn sideways. So maybe you can see that a little bit. I usually have a relatively open knee. I'm not doing walking the rails down here, but I'm a little bit closer to the ground. So here, I want to work on and explore that up, slight bend of the knee, still be able to reach my shoulder width, and still not fall into the step. And we want our hands one of 5 places when we do a walking exercise. They can be where they were at the end closing, one over the other, left over right or right over left. Create a hook with one hand, set the other one in. Same thing, left over right, right over left. Right before we closed, our hands were floating. And I want you to notice that's the only activation. The compression on the top of the wrist, the extension on the bottom of the wrist will pull the hands a little bit forward depending upon how much tension you have. But, we refer to this as floating the palms, and some people will then think that they have to lift. Now I'm working to keep my hands in place. The only work I want to do is activate the wrists. And, if you have more tension, it's going to create more of a pull. And by the way, your palms don't have to be parallel to the earth. I work on my wrist flexibility, so that's not a strain for me. But you may do that, and it's like, well, I can do that, but now I have tension. So you just do that little activation where you feel comfort and the palms are downward. You also have lightly closed fists, wrists forward. Now notice when I do that, at this point in my life, my hands pull out. 11 years ago, I'd go from there to there, and there'd be, very little change. It's just been a physical change of muscular and skeletal, well, not really skeletal structure. There's more muscular structure over the last 11 years. This is just where things are now. Probably also dealing with my teeth. I got a little tea caught in my throat. Let's see if I can get rid of it by drinking more tea. It may be the way, my muscles are holding tension too. That's what I was saying before I had that little cough. All right. So the last position, so we have belly, we have back, we have palm down, lightly closed fist, we have hands on the hips. This is where I normally put my hands when I'm teaching, when I'm leading, because that way people can see, if I talk about don't let your hips tilt, and then I can give them the visual, or if we're talking about hips turning, then you can see my elbows and my hands, my arms, sort of mark the same direction my hips, and it's a little bit easier to see than me just turning my hips. So rails, I have a couple of choices here. I can float one foot over its railroad track and float the other foot over its railroad track, or I can bring the foot in and put the foot back out. The floating one over the other, and we call it a floating step. The bringing in and going back out, we call it the hokey pokey step. So hands in one of those 5 places, each will impact your balance in different ways. Choose the one that works best for you. Again, we want to be barely a bend of the knee. We need enough of a bend so we can still reach our shoulder width and still sit the foot down. Boom. But it'll be a very short step. You probably can't really see this if you're looking at it from a distance, but I haven't really even stepped half the length of my foot. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, ball of the foot. Heel down. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, ball of the right foot. Crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, ball of the left foot. Hearing a theme. I'll take a couple of steps floating. But again, very little bend of the knee, very short step. For some of you, if you're here for minimal when we did that, this is sort of an aspect of minimal, is you're taking really small steps, so you're probably up higher in your stance. Now, we started with a step to the left. We want to finish with a step to the right. We're going to do what we refer to as a casual closing. We want to find that movement through the whole body, so wherever your hands are, in one of those places, they release from what they're doing. They float up, out, away from the body, and up over the top of the ball. That foot is now in. Now I've been lengthening as the hands go down to press the heel down. This time I'm going to shorten, press the heel down and lower my body, and then stand up out of it to bring my hands to the belly. So that way you get whole body movement. So there's walking the rails in tall. You can, of course, do an entire form. Whatever your short form is, whatever your long form is, play it or a section of it tall. We'll do a quick Tai Chi walk and call it a video shoot. Our Tai Chi stance of Water Tiger School is different than others. Again, everybody's different. But we all have the same goal. We all look at the same principles, though we look at them in different ways. So some of us may view the principles differently than others. It doesn't change the principles. It just changes the way people do things. And we seek to understand those differences, embrace them, because differences, variety, this exercise is variety is the spice of Tai Chi. That's how we usually refer to this and some other things that we have done in this video series. And that variety is out there in the world, and our differences, we shouldn't be slamming the way other people do things just because they do them differently than us. We should seek to understand them. That makes our own perspective better, and sometimes it leads to a change in us. There are things in the Water Tiger School lineage that have evolved over the years because of working with other people and seeing how they do things. And that makes more sense than the way we've been doing that. So our Tai Chi stance, back foot is somewhere around a 45. I'm going to start with the right foot as the back foot. And when I say around a 45, that's not just because it's squishy and it can be wherever it lands. It's because some people have different ankle flexibilities and foot flexibilities and that sort of thing. So yes, ideally, toes forward to toes directly to the wall on my right side. That's a 90-degree angle. So I should be at the halfway point between them. But if I have a tight ankle or hunks of metal holding things together, I might be at, say, a 30-degree angle. I do have hunks of metal in my left foot, and sometimes my left foot can't be at the 45. So set enough weight in that foot, and then step the other foot out. And you'll notice those toes are pointing right down the blue line. So they can be coming in, so they start to move the same direction as the back foot. Your knee will still be supported. What I don't want to be in forward stance. Right? A lot of people say, think, oh, you said the toes are always supposed to be forwards, but your toes are out at an angle here. And it's like, well, I said the toes are always supposed to be forward in forward stance, didn't I? Right? So like when we do our transition, those toes are going to turn out. But that's not forward stance. This is forward stance. You also want to be careful of that front knee, that regardless of the depth of your stance, knee over ankle is safest, knee over the top of the foot is okay, but if I start going over or beyond the toes, I'm going to be in trouble. Well, I guess I would be in trouble, but my knee will take the brunt of the trouble. And so will my bank account or my insurance company's bank account. Because if the feet are in the wrong place and you're putting spiral or shearing pressure on that knee because your feet and knees are not moving together the way they should, healthy knees will become unhealthy knees. But if everything's together the way it's supposed to be, unhealthy knees can actually reverse course and become maybe not healthy knees, but healthier. And again, mileage may vary. So in this position, I've got about six. I'm going to shorten my stance because that's what we're doing. We're staying tall. Tall means short stance, right? I can't step long if I'm tall or I fall into the step. So, plus, if I step long, I'm not going to be tall anymore. So, toes forward, even at this height, with just a slight bend of the knee, I should still have about 70% of the weight on the front foot, about 30% of the weight on the back foot. Again, knee over ankle, safest. Knee over the top of the foot, okay. Here, my hips are square. When we turn back, you want to make sure you're not pushing that knee sideways. That back knee is not an old-fashioned saloon door. So, sitting down, closing the quad, knee still pointed the same direction as that back foot. When you turn forward, knee over ankle, right? So there are 5 things that get us from one side. I do this all the time. I do the 4th thing. Maybe that's because I'm working with Tony Horton on the power of 4. But it's 5 things that we do to get from one side to the other. This is 5. This is the ready position. 1 is the step. 2 is the stance. So we need our hands in one of our 5 places. Belly, back, hips, palm down, lightly closed fists. 3 is a rock back. 4, the quad opens like a door, like the pages of a book. Again, I don't want to pull this knee with me when I pivot that direction. I want to keep that back knee facing the same direction as the back foot. Now my left foot is at the 45. You can see my hips are open now. The quad, where the inner upper thigh comes into contact with the pelvic bowl, is open. That was 4. Here's 5. 1. 2 is the stance. 3 is the rock back, releasing the ball of the foot, knee and toes pointed the same direction. That remains true as I open the quad. 4 and 5. Oops, had to touch down. 1, 2. I'm going to blame yesterday's leg workout. 3, 4, 5. Little series 1 called Drop, Pulse, and Hold. 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1. Each of the squats, 2, or lunges are done in 3 phases. 3 is the rock back and release. 4 is the opening. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each is a deepening, moving into the squat or moving into the lunge. 2, 3, 4, 5 for 15 repetitions. 1. Then you stay down and pulse for 10, and then you do a static hold for 10. 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is the last step. 1, 2. Our little casual close, up, out, away from the body. This time I'm going to lengthen. A little rebound. And again, a form, a more involved walking exercise with posture. Parting wild horse's mane is a walking exercise. Brushing, step, and strike is a walking exercise. Repulse the monkey is a walking exercise, etc. And you have tall, another lottery slip from Water Tiger School's lottery exercise. So I think we have 1 or 2 more of these slips left. So you might see those in the months and weeks to come. Next video probably won't be produced until after the end of August, just given how much time's left in the month and what our schedule is for the next 3 weeks. So there's that. And again, if things don't slow down with the Delta variant and we find ourselves in another situation with home isolation, these will probably become more frequent again, but we'll see. So there you are. As always, I appreciate your time and attention. Water Tiger School appreciates your patronage. Now, on the YouTube channel, I'd always like to say, we do hold comments for preview, not because we want to take out negative comments, but because we've discovered the YouTube algorithms aren't really good at screening for inappropriateness on their own. Yes, there's a toggle switch you can throw and it says, remove inappropriate content, but yet we still, before we went to preview, we were still getting lots of opportunities to go on dates with people, or ways to go on dates with, well, you know what I mean. And then, that doesn't belong in our feed. So as long as even, negative comments are respectful, they will make their way through. We also share a link to this on our Facebook page, and those comments are, of course, open. There's Maya's tail as she walks by in front. So there you are again. Thanks for your time and attention. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks before we produce another one of these, probably 3. We'll see. And maybe another Tai Chi thing. Maybe we'll go back. We still have lots of animal frolics to do as well. Those tend to be popular. But please, keep up the 3 W's. Of course, wash your hands. Always wash your hands. Were you as surprised as we were that people were not really washing their hands before the world stopped a year ago in March? Wash your hands, watch your space, and wear a mask. That's all I'll say about that. So, thanks everybody. Take care. Stay safe.